And we're live.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We're about to begin our Committee of Adjustment meeting, so I'll call that to order. Tonight's meeting is a public meeting, of course, held under Section 45 of the Planning Act to consider a minor variance application. The minor variance application A22-03 is for a property located at 536 Fiddle Park Lane in the town of Shelburne. The purpose and effect of the application is to request relief from sections 5.68 and 3.2.4 of the zoning bylaw number 38-2007 in order to construct a converted dwelling with a second dwelling unit in the cellar of the existing single detached dwelling with an associated external stairwell. Man, that's a mouthful. The application is seeking relief from the regulations which states that a dwelling unit shall not be located in the cellar of a dwelling and that stairs are not permitted within the required interior side yard. So I'll now ask the clerk for the method of notice for tonight's public meeting.
Notice of tonight's public meeting was advertised in local media sources. Notice is posted on the Town of Shelburne website, and property owners within a 60-meter radius have received notification.
Perfect. Okay, so I believe we have Steve on our planner. And Steve, you'll walk us through the report that you've prepared, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do have a brief presentation for this application A2203. Bear with me for a second while I just put that on screen. Hopefully that came up okay. Can you see that, Mr. Chair? All right. So this application, as noted, is for the residential property at 536 Fiddle Park Lane. Just to orient you to the property, so it is within a residential neighborhood near the southwest corner of Fiddle Park Lane and Greenwood Street. It's one lot in west of Greenwood Street. So it's not the corner lot, but one lot in from the corner. And you can see the property is occupied by an existing single detached dwelling. It does have a 2-car wide driveway and a double-car garage at the front of the house. So there's lots of room for parking. So this is the drawing that was submitted by the applicant for the minor variance. As noted by the chair, the variance is for 2 primary purposes. The first is that the zoning bylaw only permits a second dwelling unit within a home if it's located within a story of the home that's a certain amount above grade. And as you've seen in previous applications that this committee has dealt with, we've investigated that, but have not found a building code related reason for that. It is simply a zoning approach that was used when the zoning bylaw was adopted in 2007, I think, to put some control on the approval of these additional units. So there's a checkpoint on servicing and parking and those kinds of things. So like many homes, this home does not have a lower level or basement that is 50% or more above grade. In fact, most of the lower level is below grade, but that doesn't mean it's not suitable for use as a habitable dwelling unit by converting that space to an apartment. So that's the first reason for the variance. The second reason is this owner is proposing to construct a basement stairwell exterior to the house on the west side yard. So the bylaw does allow for some consideration of those kinds of exterior stairwells if it's at the back of the house, or if it were a corner lot and it's on the exterior side yard facing the street, allows some relief, but it does not contemplate it in an interior side yard. We've investigated that further as well, just to see if that's a common restriction in zoning bylaws in Ontario. And I think it's a matter of the date of the zoning bylaw, because many zoning bylaws do in fact permit that now in order to encourage and allow for basement and lower level apartments with a separate entrance. And that would be the purpose of this. The one thing that does need to be checked with that is just to make sure that there's still adequate space to get around the house to access the side and rear yards for maintenance by the owner. And also just to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the drainage plan for the area, so that there's no runoff or additional drainage blockage or anything like that because often there's a common side yard swale between the homes. So you can see it would be located on the west side and would occupy a small section of the side wall of the house, and the stairs would go down from grade to probably about 7 or 8 feet below grade, and then there would be an entrance into the side of the basement there into the lower level apartment. They are leaving a little bit of space between the side lot line and the proposed edge of the stairwell, about 0.15 meter, or about 6 inches of space. So not really enough space to walk around within the property line, but they do still have access on the other side of the property with about 6.5 or 6 foot 2.5 inches of space between the side lot line on the east side of the house and the interior, or the stairwell here, would occupy about 4 meters of length of the side yard. So not the entire side yard by any means, but just a small portion of it. So the applicant has also provided a floor plan for the proposed basement apartment unit. It does show 2 bedrooms that are proposed with the window openings required for egress, as well as the entrance, again, on the west side via an exterior stairwell with a little entrance lobby. There's some existing recreational space that would continue to be accessible from the main dwelling above, but then the other entrance interior at this point would go into the apartment, which, as I noted, is 2 bedroom with a living room space and a kitchen. This is just a bit of a closer look at the side yard condition that's proposed. We did not recommend a condition of approval dealing with the grading review, because that would be required regardless of whether the variance is required. There will need to be a review by Jim or one of his staff, just to make sure that the location of a stairwell in that side yard will not create any drainage concerns. This is the diagram that's provided in the zoning bylaw on the left-hand side of the slide, and it just shows how the zoning bylaw distinguishes between what's defined as a cellar and what's defined as a basement. And what many people would normally consider a conventional basement, i.e. the majority of the vertical space is below grade, is actually defined as a cellar. And then the bylaw goes further to say that you can't have a dwelling unit entirely within the cellar. So thus the need to get a minor variance in order to permit that kind of space to be used for a dwelling unit. In this condition, which is typically a bungalow or a walkout basement condition, the bylaw does permit as of right for that kind of space to be used for a second dwelling unit. So we are here this evening to receive comments both from the committee and from the public, if there are any members of the public attending. We haven't received any comments of objection to the application today. We did review the application under the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance, and subject to any comments or information received from the committee and public tonight, from our analysis, it does appear to meet those tests. One thing that we considered in relation to the side yard relief is that the bylaw does allow things like wheelchair ramps in a side yard right up to the lot line. So this wouldn't be significantly different from that. It's a stairwell instead of a ramp, but the same, outcome would be achieved in terms of providing entrance into the home and not allowing for a through access to the rear yard, albeit they can still access around the other side of the dwelling to the backyard. In terms of the relief requested to allow second dwelling unit within the lower level of the home, we've captured the summary of the same, kind of justification that's been established for many similar previous applications where this has been allowed, that it is a space that can be constructed and safely built and occupied for another apartment or for a secondary unit in the home. And then there's a number of things that it supports in relation to, affordable housing, rental housing, additional dwelling units without actually, building an additional home, there are some objectives of the official plan that are supported with this type of application. You'll recall that council supported on March 14th of this year a renewal or top up of the 10 cubic meter per day infill reserve for servicing. So this is well within that. This would be the first lot this year that would count against that as one unit. So still leaving, in the order of 29 units for this type of thing for the rest of the year. We have, however, recommended some conditions in case it takes some time for the applicant to proceed if this application is approved, namely that there should be a checkpoint to confirm that with the town engineer, there is still reserve servicing capacity before a municipal approval for a building permit is issued. Secondly, that once that approval is issued, that they should build within 1 year. And if they don't build within 1 year, that capacity reserve can be revoked and would lapse unless it's requested to be renewed and reapproved. And then finally, as it relates to the side yard stairs, this is just establishing the parameters that would apply to that it's for a total length of stairs of 4.1 meters maximum, that the stairs would be a maximum of 1.2 meters in width and no closer than 0.1 meter or about 6 inches to the interior side lot line. So I'll stop sharing my screen there and would welcome any comments or questions from the committee and any members of the public attending. And I believe the applicant is in attendance for the meeting as well. Thank you very much.
So I see Member Buffett has her hand, but before Member Buffett goes, I just wanted to say off the top for myself that as you mentioned, the grading, Steve, I was wondering whether or not that should be part of the conditions that were met. But what you're saying is that you're satisfied that regardless of whether it's there or not, that will be an issue addressed by Jim and his team.
Yeah, there's two things that we normally do on that front. One is Jim or one of his staff would drop by the property, have a look at the side yard conditions, make sure that installing a stairwell in that location wouldn't create any issue with the flow of the water between the homes. And then secondly, there may be a grading deposit required as well, so that everything is constructed in accordance with the approved plans and that deposit wouldn't be returned to the owner until Jim or one of his staff are satisfied that everything was built appropriately to carry the drainage. I would think the way this would normally be done, because it's been done on a few homes in town with appropriate approvals, is there would be a drain at the bottom of the stairs that would carry that drainage away to a tile or a foundation drain or something like that, so that it's draining away and not pooling in the bottom of the stairwell. And then secondly, that the drainage would occur to the back and then to the front, splitting it in both directions away from the stairwell so that you don't have water directed towards it.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Member Buffett?
Yes, I just had a question regarding the two side yards. The side yard that the staircase is going up is probably the narrower of the two. And it seems like the one on the west side is like 6 point, like 2 feet wider than the other one. Has any consideration been given to switching them out and having it be on the other side to provide more room?
I had the same question, and the answer that we arrived at looking at the plans is that this is just a more practical arrangement because of the floor plan layout of the home, as well as the windows positioned on the other side of the home. So it works out better for the interior layout, even though the side yard on the other side is a bit bigger, would still require relief, like through a variance, but not as much relief, in that it wouldn't be as close to the property line. But the applicant may have more to add to that in terms of some of the thinking behind that design.
And just on that point, I can't see Steve is the applicant on.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Ufamadu is that. Can you hear us, Israel?
Yes, I would just like thank you very much for having me on this evening.
Or Israel, if you could just turn your volume up so we could hear you. Just having a little difficulty.
Okay, is it better now?
A little bit. Maybe if you could turn it up a little bit more, if it's possible, or maybe get closer to the mic. I'm not really sure.
How about now?
We could see you, which is great. I could see you, so that's a lot better. Go ahead.
So just like Steve has said, the existing plan of the house makes it easier to gain access from the other side, especially because the existing stairs abuts on the other side, which makes it easy for the homeowner to access the furnace and his recreational area without too much trouble. If we move the access to the other side, we end up losing some significant space that would have been used to accommodate the proposed suite in the basement. So that's why we want it on the other side.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Israel, for your additional comments. Sorry, I can't see. Does somebody else have a comment?
Walter.
Walter, sorry. Member Bernardo, please go ahead.
My question is, if there isn't adequate, like if there is a swale there and water and it's going to be affected, those stairs can't go in that area. Is there a means of putting those stairs in there and getting the swale or whatever to work so that you're not interfering with your neighbor? And I guess that question maybe is more directed towards Jim.
Yes, through your worship, I did do. Sorry about that. I did do a preliminary visit there just to check it out, and that it does look like it would fit. I didn't measure it right off with a measuring tape, but it is pretty close. But it should work. Like Steve said, usually there's a drain at the base of these type of accesses that hooks into the weepers and then gets the water out to the storm drain out front. So
my question, Jim, was on the water drainage, not on the stairs, whether it fits or not. There must be a swale or something in between that property. Now, if the stairs is going to affect the swale or the drainage of the water in that area, is there a way of still putting the stairs in and making sure the water does not affect the neighbor?
yes, that there should still be enough room there for swale. They're not overly large anyway. Our design criteria says our minimum is 150 millimeters depth, and then they're usually only about a foot or so wide anyway. So it should fit in there. So.
And it will drain the water away. It won't affect the neighbors. It's not going to pond into the backyard or whatever on the neighbor.
No, it shouldn't, but that's why we'll request a grading deposit there as well, just to make sure that anything can be corrected. So.
Okay. That's my only concern, that we're not affecting the neighbor with the stairs going in there. I've walked by the property and I've looked at it as well, and I know that there's swale on both sides of that property.
Okay. And hence, it's a great point, Member Bernardo, and that's why I was wondering whether or not that should be a condition, but that's already been addressed by Steve's comments. Any other, and I apologize, I can't see everybody on the screen, so if I'm missing somebody, just flag me again, but any other comments?
I do have one.
Member Hall, go ahead, please.
Well, it might not be a requirement. Is there any plan to put privacy fence in between, based on the fact that on that other side of that house, the house that is on the neighbor, there are windows that are facing that general direction, and I believe one of them is perhaps a dining room of some sort. So I just don't know if there's any plan from a privacy perspective.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and the applicant may be able to elaborate on this. I'm not aware of any kind of fence proposed on top of the stairwell. I do think that a railway or a railing of some kind will be needed so that people can't, fall into the stairwell area. So whether that could be designed in a way to also provide a bit of privacy along the side of the stairwell or between the stairwell and the lot line, something provided. I'm not sure, but that's something we could look at through the more detailed design.
I may add a comment to that. It's actually something we discussed with the building owner today, and we had discussed the notion of having a chat with the neighbor to see if that would be a requirement they would want to have a privacy fence. So it's a discussion the building owner is going to be having with the neighbor to see if they would want that. And if that is a requirement, then it won't be a problem to have that fence along that property line.
I will just add that our office has spoken with the neighbor. They had some questions about the application, didn't indicate a concern. They had originally interpreted the notice as meaning that it would be partially on their property. And we just explained that, no, it's entirely on the owner's property, but it will be closer to the side lot line than the zoning bylaw would otherwise allow. And that's the need for the application. So with that explanation, they didn't have any concerns and elected not to make any submissions to the committee.
Okay. Jennifer, do we have anybody on from the public or any questions that were submitted on this application?
No, there are no public members attending tonight and no questions were submitted.
Okay, perfect. If there's no other members or sorry, questions from the members, Steve, I just want to be clear. Are you recommending that we approve this application?
That's correct. So our recommendation is to approve, and then with the 3 conditions as noted in my report.
Okay. So again, without any further questions or comments, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the fact that we're being asked to approve this report. So can I get a mover to accept this report? I see Member Hall and a seconder. I can't see everybody else. If you could just.
Member Bernardo.
Member Bernardo, thank you. Member Bernardo. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this issue? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor? Okay, so that's carried. So I will read the committee's decision into the public record here. So just give me 1 second. It says, after considering the application, the committee is satisfied that the request is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate and continued use of the subject property, and maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and official plan. Accordingly, the committee resolves to grant the request. The minor variance is granted in accordance with the sketch plan provided to the committee and attached here too, only to allow the existing single attached dwelling at 536 Fiddle Park Lane to be used as a converted dwelling with a maximum of 2 dwelling units, no more than 1 of which may be located within the lowest floor level of the existing dwelling in an appropriately designed and finished habitable space that meets building, fire, and electrical safety code requirements, and to permit an external below-grade stairwell in the interior side yard and subject to the following 3 conditions. Number 1, that the owner shall obtain confirmation of sufficient reserve servicing capacity by the town engineer for the stage 1 area and allocation of servicing for the additional residential unit prior to the municipal approval of the building permit. Number 2, the owner shall obtain a building permit for the additional residential unit within 1 year of satisfying the condition 1, failing which the servicing allocation shall be revoked and this minor variance shall lapse unless the committee grants an extension prior to the expiry. And then number 3, the side yard stairs shall be located based on the sketch plan provided and shall be no greater than 4.1 meters in total length, no greater than 1.2 meters in width, and shall be no closer than 0.1 meter of the interior side lot line. And so the application has been moved and seconded and approved with the conditions as stated. So I think that's it, Steve. I thank you very much for your report, and Israel, thank you for coming on and providing your additional comments. So thank you. So with that, I'll call for an adjournment of the committee meeting. If I could get a mover for that, a Member Hall, and a seconder. Again, I can't see who's the seconder.
Egan.
Egan, Member Fegan, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, that's perfect, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so that ends the committee adjustment, and we will now proceed to our regular council meeting. And with that, I think I'll ask Jennifer and all of us to stand if at all possible as we play the national anthem. All right, that takes us to our land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and people of the Three Fires Confederacy. We're now at the point where we will disclose if anyone has any pecuniary interest. I think we all know the protocol by now that if anyone does, that is to be submitted, whether it's a pecuniary interest, conflict, or otherwise, be submitted to the clerk in writing. Moving on to the adoption of minutes, which is the March 28th, 2020 minutes. I'll read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the minutes from the regular council meeting held March 28th, 2022 be adopted and presented and circulated. Could I have a mover on that, please? Councillor Buffett and Councillor Hall, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. We have a light agenda, so I'm sure we'll get to this rather quickly. Public question period. Again, Jennifer, no, I'm assuming nobody's come forward. We don't have anything?
That's correct. No questions this evening.
And no presentations as well?
No, not this
That would have
evening.
been listed if there were. Okay, so that takes us to council inquiries. Does anybody have any council inquiries? Councilor Bernard, I'd be disappointed if I didn't hear something from you. Do you have any? You're good this evening? Okay.
Keep it light tonight.
You want to keep it light? All
Yeah.
right, that's fine. All right, that's good. That's good. You know what? What I'll say is I'll take the opportunity to mention the fantastic news that we received from the province and from the owners of Southbridge with respect to the 68 new beds and 60 renovated that will be happening here in the town of Shelburne. And so many of us around the table were able to attend, and I think collectively as council and staff, and certainly the community as a whole is certainly pleased that this kind of investment is being made in the town of Shelburne. So I just wanted to put that out there for those who may not have gotten wind of this exciting news, but I think we've heard before in other terms, but I think it's fair to say that Shelburne's open for business. So if nobody else has any council inquiries, we could then move on to, we have a presentation. In fact, I guess it's by Steve again. So Steve, if you're on, ask you to walk us through your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yes, so this, a couple of things I wanted to just introduce on this file, and I think you're aware of this, but just for those watching, the file numbering is kept the same for sign variance requests. This is A2204, and although it is numbered similar to Committee of Adjustment files, it's It's actually a council matter as it relates to sign bylaw variance requests. And further, I just wanted to clarify as well, it's not a planning act matter. A sign bylaw is a bylaw under the Municipal Act. So there are no appeal rights associated with council's decision making as it relates to a sign bylaw variance request. And the last point I would make on that is it really is at the discretion of council in terms of whether the application meets with the intent of the bylaw or whether there are any concerns and whether to grant the relief from the bylaw. So it is a bit distinct from a typical planning act matter and recommendation. So that's both for council information and the public. I do have a short presentation because I think the graphics will help to just explain the reason for this variance request. And I see that the owner, the applicant is here as well, which she may be able to help address any questions from council. So did that come up okay? Okay, great. The property that's subject to the application is 735 Industrial Road. And as we do for most applications, we like to show just where that the subject property is located and some of its surroundings. So this is right on the edge of a commercial and industrial areas. Commercial uses are predominantly located to the south and the southeast along County Road 124 and Highway 89. And then the area kind of transitions more towards more industrial uses to the west. And so it's right at the southwest corner of Industrial Road and County Road 124. I'm sure many of you will remember that this was originally built as a car dealership and was a Ford dealership for a number of years. And the use has changed. I think it was around 2017 when the current use as a fitness center moved into the building. So just to give you a feel for the existing look of the building, you can see some of its origins as a car dealership with the service bays and overhead doors on the north elevation. So this is the view of the building from looking westerly from County Road 124. And there are some existing signs for the fitness center on the building. So this is the east elevation. If you can see my cursor, and it's got the main business name and fitness center on that elevation. So that's kind of the largest sign on the current building. And then there's also the words fitness center and a logo as well on the north side. And then flipping around to the south side, you can see, again, this is the main sign facing County Road 124. And then at the south elevation, there's again, similar to the north elevation, there's the words fitness center and the logo. You can see the painted space here, kind of between the bay doors and the main former showroom or office area. That area is basically where the entrance into the new cannabis retail outlet is located. And as well, you can see, we understand from the owner and the applicant that there's entrance into the cannabis retail portion of the building from inside the gym portion of the building as well. So what's the request for the variance, or why the variance request? Firstly, there are 3 signs proposed on the building. The first one, or the largest one, would replace the south-facing sign. So this one, which says Fitness Center, with a sign for Golden Tree Cannabis, and that's the name of the proposed or the existing cannabis retail store in the building. The other part would go on this green part of the building, and that would be a logo for the same retail operation. And then on the north side of the building, they are proposing to add what they've referred to as a directional sign, really with the intent to point people seeing the building coming from the north, that the entrance into the retail store is around the south side of the building. So these are the images that the applicant has provided to illustrate the proposed sign. So again, the top image is the north elevation, and this is the quote unquote directional sign that would be provided, just the word cannabis. And on the south side would be where the main logo and sign would be located, replacing the fitness center sign on this elevation of the building and putting the Leaf logo on the green painted part of the building. And then this is the yellow door. Here's the main entrance into the retail cannabis operation. So the summary of the proposed variances, originally we looked at this as two distinct business frontages within the same building, but in fact it is really operating as one unit, one building with two businesses within it. And there is entrance between the two. So what the sign bylaw permits in that case is one sign per business frontage, and it defines a business frontage as basically the exterior wall of a store or commercial unit that faces a street. So this property faces two streets. It faces County Road 124 and it faces Industrial Road to the north. And so that means the sign bylaw would allow two signs for the entire building. One fascia sign facing east, one fascia sign facing north. It does also allow a ground sign, so a pylon sign could be located on the property, and it allows for things that are not really subject to the bylaw, including incidental and directional signs. Now, the bylaw doesn't really establish what the maximum sizes are for incidental and directional signs, but the intent is that it's other signs that help people navigate the site and understand where to go, but not primarily for advertising. So that's a bit of a discretionary thing. Is the sign primarily for advertising, or is it primarily to direct people? You can think of properties you've gone to where you're not sure where to enter or exit, how to get into the drive-through, which way to go. Those are incidental and directional signs, kind of supplementary to the main advertising. So in our report, we've looked at the intent of the bylaw and whether this is in keeping with that. The one unique aspect of this property is that although it only has the two street frontages, it is quite visible from the south along Main Street and at the intersection of 124 and 89. So it's understandably, the owners do want to be able to capture the traffic that's driving along Main Street and at that intersection so that they can see the sign from the south. And that is also where the main store entrance is located. The other aspect is that they want people coming from the north to be able to know where to go once they arrive at the site or nearby, so they know to turn on Industrial Road and come into the property and go around to the south side of the building. So the question is that more advertising signage than is reasonably appropriate for this property? Is it in keeping with the intent of the bylaw, or should there be some restrictions? And from our analysis, what we've determined is that in our view, that there is a little bit more signage proposed here than the bylaw is contemplating for this kind of property. Namely, I would suggest that the directional sign that is proposed on the north elevation of the building is larger than what we would normally consider a directional sign, because the largest part of that sign is not the arrow or the direction, it's the product that the business is selling. And so I think a large sign saying cannabis up that high on that building has more than a directional function. It is trying to attract people to the property and advertise to them what's available. So in our view, if the variance is permitted, it should be on the basis that the directional sign as proposed would be reduced in size and lowered in height, and to about half the size and about half the height at maximum, so that it's a little more discreet and less prevalent. Now, we didn't have too much concern with the proposed south-facing sign. Again, I'll just put that image up here, because as I mentioned, this is basically a change in the name or the advertising of which business on that south side. So right now it already says fitness center. They're largely the same size as you can see here. So instead of saying fitness center, it'll say Golden Tree Cannabis. The logo and that part of the sign are kind of, they go together. So we didn't really view them as two separate signs. It's kind of just that side of the building is being used for one sign with two components to it. So that sign, as well as the existing sign here and here, all are within the bylaw maximums in terms of the permitted height of a sign on those building fascias, as well as the amount of the building side that can be used for signage. So there's no variance requested for that. What is not compliant with the bylaw in this proposal is that there are more signs proposed than allowed, because the bylaw only allows 2 of the frontages to be used. So 2 sides of the building to be used for fascia signs. So the variance would request, or allowing the variance would allow a 3rd fascia sign on the south side of the building, like this. Again, this combination of logo and text, though, is within the maximum height and the maximum size of sign that would be permitted on that side of the building. It's just that it's an additional sign beyond the number permitted by the bylaw. So just to recap what we're recommending, and again, subject to council's discretion here, is that that south-facing sign, Golden Tree Cannabis, as shown on the drawings, can be supported, provided that fascia signs shall comply with all other requirements of the sign bylaw, and a sign permit shall be obtained from the town of Shelburne. And for the directional sign on the north side of the building. So let me see if I can, there we go. That should be reduced in size and lowered in height. We're thinking maybe something over here that's a little more discreet and smaller in scale. Now, if a building permit is required, a condition is recommended that obviously would need to be obtained from the County of Dufferin. And then the last thing I'll note is just that, and I'll stop sharing my screen here. The applicant did originally apply for the fitness center signs about 5 years ago in 2017. Through that application, we realized that the town realized that the building is within the MTO sign permit control area. So the applicant was directed to seek MTO permission for the sign before obtaining a town sign permit, because we really shouldn't issue a town sign permit until the MTO permit has been granted. That process was not completed. The applicant has advised they obtain the MTO permit, and that's being confirmed with MTO in terms of the gym signs that went on the building. They did apply for the sign with the town in 2017, but ultimately there was no permit issued for those signs back then. This go around, MTO has issued their sign permit for the building. So that is in hand already. So this is really now a question of sign bylaw compliance with the town's bylaw. So I'll pause there, and with that, be happy to take any questions about my report and the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. I'll just say off the top, I'm a firm believer that we should give our businesses every opportunity to succeed, certainly within the bounds of and the scope of what is allowable. And I would agree with you, and I'm glad that what is being recommended is subject to the conditions, because when I was looking at that sign, I was thinking that's pretty large for a directional sign. I was actually thinking, and you mentioned it during your presentation or your report, of these ground directional signs, because that's what I was sort of thinking, that if you're concerned about sort of directing traffic, you could use one of those foldable ground signs to direct traffic to the back of the building or to the front, however you want to put it. And maybe that was sufficient. But I would agree with you that the only way I'd feel comfortable with it is certainly to see that reduced in size. But those are just my comments. Anybody else from council have any comments with respect to the presentation? Councillor Buffett? You're on mute.
Sorry. I was agreeing with what your comments were, in that the cannabis sign on the north side is kind of a little bit of an overkill when you consider that if we just follow the bylaw, then everybody's going to be following the same bylaw instead of having an exception. And I think if you're coming from the south to the north and you see the huge sign on the other side, like, it's not going to take more than 1 or 2 trips past it that you're going to know that that's where the cannabis store is. So I don't think you need that big of a sign on the other side. A small directional sign on the ground or on the wall closer to a door sides would be more appropriate.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that sentiment. Anybody else from council have any comments? So we have the opportunity to approve the variance subject to conditions that Steve has mentioned. But if I don't see or hear from anybody else, Steve, you said the applicant is on. And so if the applicant wants to make a few comments, if If the applicant wishes, then certainly you have an opportunity now.
Are you, can you hear us
Hi,
okay, Tara?
everybody.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
I'm
she
here.
is.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I was just,
thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
sorry, start my video. I'm a newbie at this. Hi. Sorry. First of all, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time and consideration to listen to our request. Just with regards to the directional sign, as per the bylaw, from what I understand, there's no minimum nor maximum for the directional sign. It's based on I guess, viewer discretion. So that's kind of where we went at it from, like, for the directional sign. But other than that, you know, we are thankful for any and all approvals that we can get from you guys, and you know, just thank you in advance. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. With viewer discretion, it appears that at least some people feel that it's rated R with respect to how it's being proposed. But, but that's okay. I'm sure we could come to a reasonable compromise. So thank you very much, Tara, for your comments. If there's no further comments by council, I'd ask for a mover to accept the minor variance application subject to the conditions that Steve has outlined. So if we could have a mover and a seconder for that, please. So I have Councillor Bonato as a mover and a seconder. Sorry, who's the second person?
Kyle.
Kyle, Councillor Fegan. Thank you very much, Councillor Fegan. Any other comments on this? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. So that's been approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay. All right. So the second item that we have is bylaw 17-2022, which is ready for council's consideration. And that's a bylaw to appoint a lottery licensing officer. So I believe, Jennifer, you'll be tackling this one?
Yes, thank you. And through the deputy mayor, this is a legislative requirement. We now have another staff member that is trained to issue lottery licenses for us. And a little brief explanation was provided in the agenda package that it is the Alcohol and Gaming Commission who is responsible for administering lottery licensing program in the province. Municipalities are partners with them in issuing lottery licenses to eligible charitable and religious organizations. And so upon enactment of the bylaw, we will now have 3 lottery licensing officers on staff, which allows for should other members of the staff not be in the office, we've got some backup to cover us. And happy to take any questions, sorry.
So just a quick question, and maybe this should be obvious, but I'll ask the question just in case other members of the public are thinking the same thing. So when you say you have 3 lottery licensing officers on staff,
Yes.
Is that salary that is that we are paying for, or is the province kicking in to sort of cover that?
So what happens is we collect a commission off of lottery licensing applications that pays for the staff member to be eligible to issue those lottery licenses.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Okay, so we have a recommendation that be it resolved. Well, before I even go there, sorry about that. Does any member of council have any questions of Jennifer regarding the presentation, the report? Okay, so I'll read the recommendation. Be it resolved that leave be given for the reading of the enacting of bylaw 17-2022, being a bylaw to appoint a lottery licensing officer for the town of Shelburne. Could I get a mover on that, please? Councillor Bonato and Councillor Hall, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're coming close to the end, speeding close to the end. We have councillor motions. Does any councillor have a motion that they'd like to bring, or at least a notice of motion they'd like to bring? Seeing none, okay. So we'll move on to communications. We have about 12 items. Does anyone have a particular item out of the 12 that they'd like to pick out and discuss or have any questions regarding? Councillor Bonato, please go ahead.
Just item number 11, the correspondence for the nominations for the Ontario Senior of the Year Award. I think that if any of us on council have any member or senior that we think should have that award, we should bring forward the nominations, but it's also out there for the public. If there's anyone out in the public who thinks that maybe there's a senior that should deserve that Senior of the Year Award nomination, they should bring it forward to Town Hall staff and let them know so that we get that. We've had some seniors in the past that have been nominated. I believe Albert Wilbur was one year. So it's possible that there are some seniors out there that are doing tremendous work within the community and are deserving at least of the nomination of the award.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bernardo, for bringing that up. And just Jennifer, if I may ask you, because I don't want people from the public ringing down your phone all day long with nominations. If there's a process, maybe you could outline, if somebody does want to make a nomination, does that come to you and to staff, or are they going somewhere else to make that nomination?
No, within the agenda package, the letter, it has a direct link to the province's website. That link will directly connect you to them so you could submit your application.
Perfect. So that clarification is important. Thank you very much. Okay, any other items that anybody else wants to pick out? Seeing none, okay. So can I get a mover and a seconder to approve and to accept the minutes? Or sorry, the communication items, rather, I apologize. Is that Councilor Buffett, did I see your hand? Okay. And a second. And Councilor Wagner, thank you so much. Any other comments on the items? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, and that is carried. Okay, we have no items, Jennifer, for closed session, and that's confirmed, yes? Okay, and so that takes us to item number 10, the confirming bylaw, which is 18-2022, with today's date, April 11, 2022. The recommendation be it resolved that leave be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw 18-2022, being a bylaw to confirm certain proceedings of the council of the corporation of the town of Shelburne for its regular council meeting held April 11th, 2022. Could I have a mover and seconder to accept that? Councilor Hall and Councilor Buffett, thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. And we are to the end, folks. Short and sweet of the adjournment. I gotta get a mover for the adjournment, please. Councilor Hall, and I think I see Councilor Fegan's hand up there, right? Councilor Fegan, we got you on this one? So, all right, a seconder on that, all in favor? And that's carried. Well, thank you everybody for participating. Thank you all who was watching for tuning in, and that's the end of our meeting this evening. Take care.
Great job, Deputy Mayor.